The most valuable medieval secrets hid in plain sight. Master artisans became geniuses of deception, weaving their most precious blueprints into the very objects we still admire today. For these craftsmen, protecting design knowledge was not just about profit. It was a matter of economic survival and personal safety in a world without patents or copyrights. We will explore 22 of their most ingenious undercover tricks, from architectural flourishes that acted as code to hidden compartments in ordinary tools. By the end, you will see every medieval cathedral, tapestry, and piece of metalwork in a completely new light. How did a simple song contain the plans for a fortress? Why would a cookbook hide the formula for a revolutionary mortar? The answers reveal a clandestine war of wits fought with brushes, chisels, and looms. What do you think is the most clever place to hide a secret? A master mason's most valuable possession was not his tools, but the knowledge inside his head. In the 1400s, there were no legal protections for intellectual property. A single stolen design could destroy a craftsman's reputation and livelihood overnight. Guilds operated like fortified castles of information, guarding their trade secrets with a powerful mixture of tradition and fear. For a traveling artisan, the danger was even greater. He carried his entire career in a leather satchel, a collection of vellum scrolls that any rival or corrupt official would gladly seize. The loss could mean more than just poverty. If a unique castle design or a new type of crane fell into enemy hands, the craftsman could be accused of treason, a charge that often ended on the executioner's block. This constant, looming threat transformed ordinary craftsmen into masters of deception. They began to ask a revolutionary question: why risk carrying a blueprint at all when you could weave its dimensions into the pattern of a tapestry or hide its instructions within the lyrics of a popular song? The very objects they were commissioned to create became their secret vaults. This was not paranoia. It was a brilliant and necessary strategy for survival in a world where knowledge was both treasure and a terrible liability. These documents were far more than simple sketches. A single medieval blueprint could represent a lifetime of painstaking trial and error, a legacy of knowledge passed from a master to their most trusted apprentice. Think of a cathedral's architectural plan. It did not just show walls and arches. It held the secrets to hidden structural supports that allowed buildings to soar to unprecedented heights, defying gravity itself. Other blueprints contained chemical formulas for creating vibrant, unrepeatable pigments, the exact colors that gave stained glass its heavenly glow. There were mechanical designs for water mills that could power an entire village industry, lifting the economic fortunes of an entire region. And then there were the designs with military value, like improved crossbow mechanisms that could punch through armor or revolutionary castle fortifications that could withstand a siege for months. Possessing such a plan made you a target. Kings and rival lords would pay a fortune for them or simply send agents to steal them. This is why the blueprints themselves became beautiful, complex deceptions. They were drawn on expensive, durable vellum, annotated with cryptic symbols only the initiated could understand, and often included deliberate, subtle errors. An arch might be drawn a few degrees wrong, or a gear ratio slightly off, enough to cause a catastrophic failure for anyone who tried to build from a stolen copy. This underground trade in smuggled knowledge was a high-stakes game, a silent war fought with ink and parchment. It was this immense pressure that forged the first, and perhaps most brilliant, method of concealment, a trick that turned the craftsman's most public work into his most private safe. The first trick turned sacred architecture into a living library of secrets. High upon a Gothic cathedral's facade, a master builder did not see mere decoration. He saw a carefully constructed code. Every vine, every saint, and every mythical beast carved from stone could hold a specific numerical meaning. The number of leaves on a carved cluster might reveal the ideal ratio for mixing mortar. The precise angle of a sculpted angel's wing could indicate the necessary pitch for a drainage channel. Even the arrangement of gargoyles, those fantastical rain spouts, was rarely random. Their positions often mapped the points of greatest structural load on the building below, a permanent record of how to distribute weight across vast stone ceilings. This was not wild speculation. It was a sophisticated system of visual ciphers. At Chartres Cathedral, the intricate labyrinth set into the floor is more than a spiritual walking path. Many historians are now convinced its complex geometry is a direct representation of the core mathematical principles used to raise the cathedral's towering walls and vaults. A visiting guild member from a distant city could stand before this masterpiece and silently absorb generations of architectural wisdom. To any observer, he was simply a pilgrim in quiet contemplation. In reality, he was reading the most secure blueprint imaginable, one carved permanently into the heart of a holy place. The information was immortalized in stone, safe from fire, theft, or decay, yet completely invisible to anyone outside the trusted circle of craftsmen. Beauty was not just for inspiration, it was the perfect camouflage, but the stone code of cathedrals was a permanent public record. What about the secrets that needed to travel? For those, artisans turned their workshops into miniature alchemical labs, creating the medieval world's first invisible inks. They did not need complex chemicals. A bit of lemon juice, some milk, or even water from a boiled onion became their essential tools of espionage. An artisan could draft a perfectly ordinary-looking blueprint for a chest or a window frame. Then, using a fine brush dipped in one of these clear concoctions, he would add the truly vital information directly onto the parchment. Critical dimension adjustments, a secret material specification, or a warning about a structural weakness would be written invisibly in the margins. To anyone else, the document was complete and perhaps even slightly flawed, but the intended recipient, another trusted guild member, knew the trick. He would carefully hold the vellum near the warmth of a candle flame or a brazier. As the heat spread, the organic compounds in the lemon juice or milk would caramelize, and the hidden text would slowly materialize in a light brown script, as if written by a ghostly hand. This was a brilliant two-layer defense. A rival who intercepted the blueprint would see only an incomplete or subtly incorrect design. If he built from it, his project might fail, protecting the guild's reputation for unrivaled quality. For more long-term secrets, they developed an even more cunning ink, a mixture made from gallnuts, which are growths on oak trees, and vitriol, a common mineral, would be completely transparent when first applied. But this ink was patient. Over several days, as it was exposed to the air, a chemical reaction would occur, and the message would darken all on its own, appearing exactly when the receiver needed it. This transformed an ordinary workshop drawing into a timed release capsule of information, proving that for these master craftsmen, even a simple recipe for ink could be a powerful weapon in the silent war to protect their most precious knowledge. A hymn book was far more than a spiritual guide. It could be a perfectly disguised architectural portfolio. For the medieval artisan, music and mathematics were two sides of the same coin, and they brilliantly fused them into a third ingenious trick, using musical notation as a precise measurement cipher. Many master craftsmen were also skilled musicians, making sheet music a natural and unsuspicious tool for their work. To a guard rifling through a traveler's belongings, a parchment of Gregorian chants was just that, a harmless devotional item. But to a guild member who knew the key, those same notes held the secret dimensions for a vaulted ceiling or a fortified gatehouse. The system was beautifully complex. The 5 lines of the musical staff became a ruler. The precise vertical position of a note could indicate a specific length, perhaps the height of a wall in units of feet. The horizontal spacing between notes could dictate the breadth of a room or the depth of a foundation trench. Even the rhythm itself held meaning. A series of quick, staccato notes might represent the number of iron reinforcements needed for a door, while a long, sustained whole note could encode the crucial angle for a supporting buttress. A complete melody, something sung openly in a chapel, could therefore be a direct translation of a building's core proportions. The rising and falling intervals of the tune, the step from one note to the next, mirrored the exact ratios that gave a structure its stability and grace. A craftsman could literally sing his way through the construction of a bell tower, the melody serving as his permanent, memorizable blueprint. This method created a formidable double lock on the information. First, you needed to be musically literate, a skill that was common among the educated elite but not universal. Second, and more importantly, you needed to know which specific cipher the guild was using. Was a quarter note worth 1 foot or 1 inch? Did the key of the piece shift the baseline measurement? Without that secret key, the most intricate symphony was just a collection of pleasant sounds. With it, a simple hymn book became a treasure map, its melodies guiding the initiated to build wonders hidden in plain hearing. While a hymn could carry a blueprint in its melody, a tapestry could weave one into its very soul. The rhythmic clatter of the loom became a form of encryption, transforming luxurious textiles into secure data storage for the medieval world's most sensitive designs. A weaver working with dyed wool on a vast frame was not just creating a decorative scene for a castle wall. He was a cryptographer, using the fundamental grid of warp and weft threads as his coordinate plane. In this system, every colored intersection was a data point. A specific sequence of red threads might chart the load-bearing points of a stone arch, while a complex geometric border pattern could secretly map the intricate gear train of a new type of watermill. The famous Bayeux Tapestry, with its grand depiction of the Norman conquest, holds a tantalizing mystery in its upper and lower borders. Some scholars point to the repeating, intricate patterns of ships and beasts, arguing they are far more than mere decoration. They propose these sequences are a visual cipher, a recorded memory of the very shipbuilding techniques that allowed William the Conqueror to cross the English Channel. The curve of a beast's back could mirror the critical hull curvature of a longship, and the spacing between motifs might detail the ideal placement for its structural ribs. To any noble or visitor, the tapestry was a magnificent historical record, but to a shipwright from the right guild, it was a technical manual hanging in plain sight. These textiles were the perfect smuggling tools. They were valuable trade goods moved without suspicion across checkpoints and borders. A rolled-up tapestry was just another luxury item, not a set of incriminating parchment plans. Its true value was locked away in a language of color and thread, a code that only a fellow master of the loom could ever hope to read. In an age of spies and rival lords, the most brilliant secrets were not hidden in a locked chest. They were displayed proudly on the wall for all to see, protected not by a key but by collective understanding. A carpenter's plane was far more than a tool for smoothing wood. In the hands of a guildsman, it became a masterfully crafted secret vault. While the blade-shaped timber, the plane's own body could hide a tightly rolled vellum blueprint within a perfectly fitted false bottom, a compartment undetectable unless you knew the exact spot to press and slide a hidden panel. This principle of concealment extended to every item in the workshop. A heavy mallet might have a handle that unscrewed, revealing a hollow chamber for a small scroll. A chisel's sturdy wooden grip could be crafted in two halves, joined by a thread so fine it was invisible to the naked eye, requiring a specific combination of twisting and pulling to access its hidden space. These were not paranoid fantasies. They were essential features for an artisan transporting his life's work across hostile borders. The most sophisticated hiding places, however, were reserved for the traveling chests that carried these very tools. To a customs agent, such a chest was a simple, sturdy box, perhaps with a single, obvious lock. He would open it, see the array of hammers and saws, and move on. He would never suspect that the chest itself held the real secret. Some chests had secondary compartments accessed by pressing a seemingly decorative inlay in a precise sequence. Others used a hidden magnetic trigger. A common iron key held against a specific point on the lid would release a concealed catch, allowing a thin drawer to silently slide open from the side. Perhaps the most brilliant deception was the carpenter's square. An inspector would see a standard, essential tool for checking right angles. But if you knew the trick, the two arms of the square could be separated, revealing that the tool was also a set of precision measuring rules. These rules, however, were not marked with ordinary inches. Their calibration was unique, a guild-specific scale that corresponded directly to the proportions used in their private blueprints. A measurement taken with this secret rule was useless to an outsider, but to a guild member, it was the key to accurately interpreting the plans they had so carefully smuggled. The greatest security lay in the sheer ordinariness of these objects. Who would think to search for state secrets inside the handle of a hammer or the body of a workaday plane? The artisans turned the very symbols of their trade into their most trusted accomplices, carrying their future in their hands, hidden in plain sight. The vibrant colors of a cathedral's stained glass window were a chemical secret, and sometimes a carefully plotted map, while the faithful saw scenes of saints and prophets bathed in divine light. A master glazier could be reading a precise structural blueprint. This sixth trick transformed the very chemistry of glass into a durable public code. The formulas for creating those brilliant, unrepeatable colors were jealously guarded mysteries. A particular shade of ruby red, achieved by suspending gold chloride within the glass, was a fortune in itself, but artisans realized these formulas could be rearranged into a numerical cipher. In a window's decorative border, a sequence of cobalt blue, pot metal green, and silver stain yellow might not be a random artistic choice. To an initiated craftsman, that color sequence could translate directly into a set of measurements. Cobalt blue might represent the number 10, green the number 5, and yellow the number 1. A pattern of blue, green, yellow would then secretly indicate the ratio 10 to 5 to 1, perhaps the exact proportions for mixing an exceptionally strong mortar. The window itself, with its lead came and iron armature, became a diagram. The way the light fell through a specific pane of violet glass could indicate the point of maximum stress on a distant arch. The intricate, swirling reds in a depiction of a saint's robe might secretly chart the complex flow of tension through a stone vault, showing where hidden supports were most needed. This was information security at its most brilliant. The data was displayed for all to see, yet protected by two layers of specialized knowledge. First, you needed to be a master glazier to understand the complex chemical recipes the colors represented. Second, you needed the guild's specific key to decipher what those color sequences actually meant in terms of feet and inches, or ratios and weights. A rival artisan could stare at the same window for hours and see only a beautiful biblical story. He would have no idea he was looking at the master plan for the building's very skeleton, a secret written not in ink, but in light and color, preserved for centuries behind the perfect camouflage of faith and art. A mason's mark was far more than a simple signature. On the surface, it was a pragmatic tool, a way for a guild to track the work of its members and ensure each man was paid for the stones he carved. But these seemingly simple glyphs, chiseled into the base of a pillar or the back of a gargoyle, possessed a hidden technical layer known only to the initiated. The same mark that identified the craftsman could also serve as a precise set of instructions. The number of angles in a mark might specify the type of stone required for that very block, with 3 angles indicating a softer sandstone for decorative work and 6 angles demanding a hard granite for a foundational load. The depth and width of the carved lines could secretly note the calculated weight that specific stone needed to support, a critical piece of data for ensuring the entire structure above it remained stable for centuries. This system transformed every marked stone into a silent, permanent page from a building's technical manual. The most powerful symbols, however, were the public ones. The square and compass, proudly displayed on guild halls and official documents, was a perfect example of this duality. To the outside world, it was a straightforward emblem of the mason's trade, representing morality and accuracy. But when drawn with the compass set at a specific, non-standard angle, the symbol became a geometric cipher. The resulting triangle, hidden within the emblem's familiar shape, could encode the exact proportional ratio for the building's most critical feature, perhaps the ideal slope of a roof or the perfect curve of an arch. This hidden geometry was the master key to the entire design. A traveling master mason arriving at a new cathedral site would not need to unroll a single fragile parchment. He could simply walk the perimeter, reading the mason's marks like a foreman's notes, and study the public guild symbols to understand the core architectural principles. The information was not locked away. It was embedded directly into the skeleton of the building itself, a permanent and accessible record for those who knew how to look. These carvings created an unbroken chain of knowledge, allowing a guild's most precious structural secrets to be passed down not in books, but in the very stones they were sworn to perfect. Inside a prayer book's ornate borders, a dragon's coiled tail could hold the secret to a cathedral's vaulted ceiling. Illuminated manuscripts, those breathtaking books filled with gold leaf and vibrant pigments, were more than just objects of devotion. They became the 8th ingenious trick, a secure network for transmitting technical knowledge under the guise of sacred art. The monks and skilled artisans who created these masterpieces often possessed a deep understanding of geometry and draftsmanship. They realized that the wildly imaginative creatures and lush, twisting foliage that filled the margins were the perfect camouflage for precise architectural diagrams. A serpentine beast winding through the text was not merely a fanciful decoration. The specific curve of its body could be a direct tracing of the ideal arch for a bridge or a doorway, its spine illustrating the exact distribution of weight and force. Even the seemingly random gaps between clusters of flowers or leaves could be a deliberate code. The space between one acanthus leaf and the next might represent a critical measurement ratio, perhaps the proportion of a room's width to its height, ensuring perfect acoustics or structural harmony. These manuscripts were ideal for smuggling such secrets. They traveled with official permission between monastic libraries and the courts of nobility, their holy contents guaranteeing them safe passage. A guard or a rival agent would never think to scrutinize the decorative swirls on a page of scripture for hidden blueprints. To do so would be an act of sacrilege, a line few were willing to cross. This gave the concealed information a powerful layer of protection, shielded not by a lock but by societal reverence. A master builder could send a complete set of instructions for a new fortress gate across the continent, hidden within the glorious borders of a psalter. The recipient, another guild member, would know to study the marginalia not for its artistic merit, but for its hidden geometry. In this way, the most fantastical art became a practical tool, and the quietest corners of a holy book whispered the secrets of how to build the physical world. A humble ceramic plate displayed on a noble sideboard could secretly hold the design for an entire water wheel. Potters and tile makers perfected the art of embedding complex schematics within the flowing, abstract patterns of their glazes. This was not a random artistic choice. It was a sophisticated visual language, a code where every swirl and color shift held specific meaning. To an outsider, the vibrant blues and greens on a decorative tile were simply a beautiful imitation of flowing water or lush foliage. But to a guild member who knew the cipher, that same pattern was a precise mechanical diagram. The point where a deep cobalt blue met a sharp line of iron-red glaze might represent a crucial pivot joint in a grain mill's mechanism. The repeating, interlaced curves of a floral border could secretly chart the gear ratios for a complex clockwork assembly, with each petal's curve corresponding to a specific tooth count on a gear. These ceramic items were the perfect smuggling devices. They were everyday trade goods, moved in crates across kingdoms without a second glance from customs officials. A stack of plates was just pottery, not a suspicious collection of parchment rolls. Once delivered, they could be openly displayed in a workshop or a home, their true nature hidden behind a veil of pure artistry. The firing process in the kiln made these hidden messages permanent, fusing the secret blueprints into the very fabric of the clay under a glossy, transparent seal. A schematic hidden in a book could be burned or decay. A message written in invisible ink could fade, but a technical diagram baked into a tile at a temperature of over 1,000 degrees Celsius was virtually indestructible, a durable repository of knowledge that could survive fires, wars, and centuries of neglect. The most public and decorative of objects became the most private and secure of libraries, proving that for these ingenious artisans, even a simple dinner plate could be a vault for the future. A merchant's leather-bound ledger was more than a record of sales. It was a masterclass in mechanical engineering, its cover hiding an entire workshop's worth of secrets in plain sight. Bookbinders and leather workers elevated their craft into a sophisticated form of data encryption. The intricate floral patterns and geometric borders they tooled into leather covers for journals and account books were rarely just decorative. To the trained eye of a guild member, that beautiful, repeating design was a precise architectural elevation for a new type of fortified tower. The sequence of different stamps a master used, shifting from a rosette to a fleur-de-lis to a simple dot, could be a direct set of assembly instructions for a complex loom or a water pump. The very spacing between each impression of the brass stamp held critical meaning. A gap of 3 finger widths between one stamp and the next might specify a 3-foot beam length, while a much tighter spacing could indicate the required thickness of a metal plate. This method offered a brilliant two-fold security. First, the information was physically impressed into the material, not drawn on it. A casual observer or even a suspicious official would see only fine craftsmanship. There was no ink that could be washed away or fade, and the design was an integral part of the object itself. Second, these leather goods were the perfect vehicles for smuggling. They traveled constantly and without suspicion in the saddlebags of merchants and the diplomatic pouches of envoys. A customs agent would inspect a crate of such books, check for contraband tucked between the pages, and move on, completely unaware that the sensitive designs he was tasked to intercept were stamped boldly onto the covers he had just handled. The hidden blueprints were not just secure, They were incredibly durable, capable of surviving journeys across continents and remaining perfectly legible for generations. A master's most vital knowledge could cross a dozen hostile borders, protected by nothing more than the elegant, unassuming beauty of a tooled leather binding. A single, deliberate stitch could hold the secret to a castle's foundation. Embroidery, often dismissed as a simple domestic craft, became the 11th and perhaps most elegant trick for encoding complex technical data. In convents and noble households across Europe, female artisans perfected a silent language of thread and needle, turning decorative patterns into secure data storage. A chain stitch looping continuously might represent the linked iron rings of a portcullis mechanism. A dense satin stitch, smooth and solid, could indicate a load-bearing stone wall. Even the humble cross-stitch with its intersecting threads became a perfect symbol for the critical joints in a timber frame. The sequence in which these stitches were applied was everything. A border pattern that alternated 3 chain stitches with 1 cross-stitch was not random artistry. It was a precise instruction, perhaps dictating the 3-to-1 ratio needed for mixing a particularly resilient type of plaster. The color progression in a seemingly naturalistic flower, shifting from deep crimson to pale pink, could secretly chart the required thickness of a metal plate, moving from a robust half-inch down to a delicate eighth. This method provided a powerful and discreet form of agency for women artisans who are often excluded from the male-dominated guild halls. Embroidery offered a sanctioned way to participate in the vital work of preserving knowledge. An altar cloth commissioned for a local church could be openly displayed, its sacred imagery inspiring reverence. Yet woven into the robes of a saint or the petals of a lily were the complete plans for a new type of well pulley or grain hoist. The very assumption that needlework was purely decorative became its greatest security feature. Who would ever suspect that a ceremonial banner fluttering in a castle's great hall was in fact a technical manual? These textiles traveled through marriage dowries as gifts between abbeys and in the luggage of diplomats carrying their hidden schematics across the known world. The information was not just hidden, it was beautifully and permanently preserved, each stitch a locked vault of knowledge protected by the quiet dignity of the craft itself. A tiny lion stamped on a silver chalice was far more than a guarantee of quality. This was the 12th trick, where the legally required hallmarks of goldsmiths and silversmiths became a sophisticated microcode for transmitting secrets. Every guild had its own unique set of punches, the small steel stamps used to impress their marks onto precious metal. While the official purpose was to certify purity and origin, the initiated used these marks to hold a wealth of hidden technical data. The precise placement of a mark was the first layer of the cipher. A crown symbol stamped directly upright might signify the standard measurement for a foot used in that particular workshop. But that same crown, impressed at a subtle 15-degree tilt, could instead indicate a secret alloy formula, specifying the exact ratio of tin to copper needed to create a bronze that would not crack when cast into large bells. Even the sequence of marks told a story. A row of stamps reading leopard's head, maker's mark, and date letter might seem entirely administrative. To a guild member, however, that specific sequence of a beast, a symbol, and a letter could be a direct instruction, perhaps detailing the 3-stage tempering process required to forge a particularly resilient type of steel blade. The sheer legality of these hallmarks was their greatest strength. An official assay master, the person responsible for checking the purity of precious metals, would examine the marks to ensure they met the standard. He would never think to question their placement or orientation, as his only concern was their legal authenticity. This system allowed masters to embed fragments of larger designs onto tiny objects. The curvature of a date letter script might secretly mirror the critical camber of a wooden bridge, while the intricate shape of a maker's own symbol could contain the entire gear pattern for a clock's escapement, miniaturized into a single, elegant emblem. In a world of prying eyes, the most secure messages were not hidden away, but stamped in plain sight with the full authority of the law, turning every piece of certified silver and gold into a potential courier for the guild's most guarded knowledge. The very wood grain of a cathedral pew could whisper the secrets of its construction. Master woodcarvers developed a 13th trick so subtle it was woven into the material itself, embedding technical diagrams within the natural patterns of the timber. They did not carve against the wood's inherent flow, but collaborated with it, using the swirling lines and knots as a pre-drawn canvas for their hidden blueprints. In a decorative panel on a choir stall, the carver would follow the sweeping direction of the grain to outline the ideal curve for a stone arch, the wood's own path dictating the most efficient and beautiful structural form. A complex knot, often seen as a flaw, was transformed into a critical data point. By carving a series of concentric rings around it with a specific tool, the artisan could encode the calculated load that particular joint needed to withstand, a permanent warning about material stress points for future generations of builders. This approach was genius in its invisibility. The hidden information was not merely on the wood, it was of the wood, integrated so completely with its natural characteristics that it became indistinguishable from them. To any observer, a beautifully carved chest was just a piece of fine furniture, but to a guildsman who knew the cipher, that same chest was a technical manual. The rhythmic pattern of alternating dark and light grain in an oak panel might secretly chart the oscillation of a water wheel's paddles, while the specific angle at which a V-shaped grain pattern was carved could reveal the precise pitch needed for a roof to shed snow most effectively. This knowledge was preserved in the most humble of objects, from the great screens of a church to the common furniture of a merchant's home. The data was safe from fire, theft, or decay, protected not by a lock, but by the sophisticated, silent language of the craft, a code written not in ink, but in the very life of the tree. A recipe for a hearty stew could secretly build a castle wall. Medieval cookbooks, those collections of culinary and household wisdom, became the 14th ingenious channel for smuggling technical blueprints. To any casual reader, these texts were simply guides to managing a prosperous kitchen, filled with instructions for roasting meats, baking breads, and preparing elaborate pottages. But within their allegorical language lay a sophisticated cipher for engineering. A list of ingredients for a thick pottage was rarely just about food. The specified amount of barley might represent the proportion of sand needed for a mortar mix, while the measure of dried peas could indicate the necessary volume of lime. The instruction to simmer for the length of time it takes to recite certain prayers was not a poetic flourish. It was a precise timer for a chemical process, perhaps the exact duration required for slaking lime to achieve the perfect consistency for binding stone. This allegorical encoding extended to mechanical assemblies as well. A detailed recipe explaining how to truss a chicken for the spit, with its specific sequence of tying wings and legs, could be a direct analog for the assembly of a complex trigger mechanism for a crossbow or a loom. The order of operations was critical, and the culinary steps provided perfect cover for the technical ones. Even baking temperatures were code. Instructions to bake bread in an oven that was moderately hot or fierce as a dragon's breath, translated into specific temperature ranges crucial for annealing metal or tempering steel, processes that required careful heat control to avoid a brittle or weak final product. The sheer mundanity of these books was their greatest asset. They circulated freely among noble households, merchant families, and monastic libraries, their contents considered entirely domestic and unthreatening. A guard inspecting a traveler's bag would readily pass over a handwritten book of recipes, seeing only a document for a cook or a housekeeper. The idea that it contained the plans for a fortified gate or a new type of mill was simply inconceivable. This method brilliantly exploited the rigid social and intellectual boundaries of the time. Culinary knowledge and mechanical engineering were seen as occupying completely separate spheres, one domestic and commonplace, the other specialized and secretive. By hiding technical data within a cookbook, artisans ensured their secrets would be overlooked by the very people tasked with finding them, protected by the perfect camouflage of everyday life. A nobleman consulting his astrological chart was often looking at far more than his future. These intricate diagrams of the heavens became the 15th brilliant method for concealing architectural blueprints. The positions of planets, carefully plotted on a parchment wheel, were a perfect visual cipher for geometric relationships. The angle between Mars and Venus in the sky could directly represent the crucial angle for a flying buttress, while the precise distance from Jupiter to the Moon might encode the span of a great hall in secret units. Even the 12 signs of the zodiac were repurposed. Aries might signify the standard foot measurement of one city, while Libra represented the slightly different cubit used in another, allowing a single chart to hold plans that could be accurately interpreted across different regional measurement systems. A horoscope cast to determine the most auspicious day for a castle's foundation stone to be laid was the perfect Trojan horse. The chart itself, with its web of lines connecting celestial bodies, could secretly be the elevation plan for that very castle's main keep. The astrologer, who may well have been in the guild's confidence, would present the noble with a forecast of prosperity and stability, all while delivering the technical schematic hidden in plain sight. These charts traveled with immense credibility. They were carried by ambassadors, studied by physicians, and cherished by the aristocracy, their contents considered profound and mystical. No guard would dare question a document that claimed to map the influence of the stars. This method cleverly exploited the era's deep-seated belief in celestial power, wrapping the cold, hard math of engineering in the respected cloak of cosmic wisdom. The secrets were not just hidden, they were sanctified by the heavens themselves, proving that for a medieval artisan, even the stars could be persuaded to keep a secret. Even a medicinal garden could nurture the seeds of a fortress. Herbal manuscripts, those essential guides to healing plants, became the 16th and perhaps most organic method for hiding technical blueprints. To a physician or monk, a detailed drawing of a sage plant was a reference for its medicinal properties, but to a guild artisan, that same illustration was a complex engineering schematic. The intricate network of veins on a meticulously drawn leaf did not just carry life, it mapped the flow of structural stress across a stone vault, showing precisely where hidden supports were needed. The proportional relationship between a flower's stamen and its petals could secretly encode the fundamental measurement standard for an entire building project, a ratio that ensured every component would fit together in perfect harmony. The root system of a mandrake, with its twisted, anthropomorphic form, was a perfect cipher for the complex plumbing required for a castle's cistern or the underground channels of a water mill. These botanical details were the ideal camouflage. Herbal knowledge was a revered science, and these beautifully illustrated manuscripts were treasured items, passed between monasteries and noble courts with complete legitimacy. A guard or official would handle such a book with respect, seeing only a valuable medical text. The idea that the branching pattern of a willow tree's illustration secretly detailed the timber framing for a siege engine was utterly beyond suspicion. This method brilliantly exploited the rigid intellectual categories of the age. Botany and architecture were seen as separate worlds of knowledge. By weaving the rigid lines of engineering into the organic forms of nature, artisans created a hidden language that was both beautiful and incredibly secure. The most advanced technical secrets of the medieval world could therefore grow safely preserved in the pages of a simple book about healing herbs. A coin passed from a merchant's hand to a farmer's palm carried more than just monetary value. Embedded in the very design of that small metal disc was a secret standard of measurement, a trick that turned everyday currency into a clandestine reference tool for master craftsmen. The mint masters responsible for creating coinage were elite metalworkers, often with deep ties to the wider guild network. They realized that the intricate patterns and lettering required on every coin were the perfect place to hide critical technical data in plain sight. The spacing between the letters of a king's Latin inscription was never arbitrary. A specific, deliberate gap between an M and a D might encode the exact ratio of a foot to a cubit, the two most common measurement standards of the age. A decorative border of alternating dots and dashes around the coin's edge could secretly chart the proportional relationship between the width and height of a stone arch, the key to its structural stability. This system was brilliant in its security and reach. A coin was the most common man-made object in circulation. It was handled by thousands, yet examined by no one. Its design became a visual background hum of daily life, the last place anyone would think to look for a smuggled blueprint. Furthermore, the process of minting, which involved hammering a blank piece of metal between two engraved dies, guaranteed that every copy of that coin was identical. This meant the hidden measurement data was perfectly preserved and replicated thousands of times, spreading a consistent, secret standard across an entire kingdom without a single whispered word. A mason working on a cathedral in a distant city could pull a coin from his purse and, by studying the arrangement of the crown's jewels or the curve of a heraldic beast, calibrate his own measuring rods to the exact same standard used by the master who designed the original dies. The most public and trusted object in society, the foundation of all commerce, became a silent, unbreakable chain of technical knowledge, ensuring that a guild's most precious building secrets remained consistent and accurate, even across vast distances and generations. The resonant voice of a church bell carried more than a call to prayer. Cast permanently into its bronze surface, the inscriptions and decorative bands surrounding sacred texts held the 18th trick, a durable library of metallurgical secrets. To any parishioner, the words were a holy verse or a record of the bell's founding, but to a master metalworker, that same inscription was a precise technical manual. The very spacing between the letters of a saint's name could indicate the exact ratio of copper to tin needed for the perfect bell bronze, a mixture that would produce a clear, enduring tone rather than a dull thud or a brittle crack. A decorative rosette placed between words was not merely a filler, it was a symbol representing the crucial temperature the molten metal had to reach before pouring, a detail that meant the difference between a masterpiece and a shattered lump. Even the sequence of symbols told a story. A pattern of a cross, a star, and a fleur-de-lis might secretly outline the three-stage cooling process required to relieve internal stresses in the metal, ensuring the bell would withstand being struck thousands of times over centuries. This method provided the ultimate long-term security. Once a bell was hoisted into its tower, it became a permanent, untouchable part of the community's spiritual life. Its inscriptions were considered sacred, protecting them from vandalism, theft, or simple disregard. The knowledge was literally frozen in metal, safe from fire and decay, available for any visiting guild member to read and learn from, even 100 years later. A founder from a distant city could stand beneath the bell, studying the arrangement of its letters and symbols as a pilgrim might, and walk away with the complete, proprietary formula for casting a perfect carillon. This was the ultimate fusion of the spiritual and the practical, where a sacred object whispered the most earthly of secrets, its holy words guarding the profound technical wisdom that gave it its own voice. The gentle flow of a public fountain could whisper the mathematics of an aqueduct. For the 19th trick, artisans transformed these essential water sources into open-air textbooks of engineering. The very path the water took from its spout through a series of decorative basins and into the drain was a living diagram. The curvature of a carved channel was not just for beauty, it perfectly illustrated the principles of laminar flow, showing how to minimize resistance in a wooden pipe. The specific height from which water fell into a central basin demonstrated the energy it could generate, a practical lesson for designing the water wheels that powered mills and forges. Even the decorative stonework held secrets. The intricate geometric patterns of the cobblestones surrounding a wellhead, often dismissed as mere pavement, could secretly encode the foundational ratios for an entire building. A repeating pattern of octagons and squares might lock away the proportional system for a vaulted ceiling, while the diameter of the well curb itself could be the master module for every measurement in a nearby church. This knowledge was embedded with incredible foresight. A fountain or well was a community's lifeline, guaranteed to be maintained and repaired for generations. This meant the hidden blueprints were not just safe, they were constantly accessible to the guild members who would later be called upon for that maintenance. A mason arriving to fix a cracked basin would study the original stonework, reading the hydraulic and structural secrets left by his predecessors as clearly as if they had drawn him a map. The information was preserved not in a fragile scroll, but in the enduring, functional heart of the town itself, a testament to the craftsman's belief that the most vital knowledge should be built to last as long as the stones that held it. A game of strategy unfolding in a monastery's quiet cloister was far more than a simple pastime. The board itself, with its grid of intersecting lines and carefully carved points, could secretly hold the stress diagram for an entire stone vault. This 20th trick transformed the familiar layouts of games like Merrill's, also known as Nine Men's Morris, and even chess, into secure carriers of technical knowledge. Each intersection point on the board was not just a place to move a piece, it was a data point representing a critical structural node in a building's design. The path a piece was allowed to travel, whether the diagonal leap of a queen or the precise three-point hop of a Merrill's token, mirrored the flow of forces through a complex machine or the ideal placement of supports within a wall. A master craftsman and his apprentice could sit and play a seemingly casual game, their moves across the board secretly reinforcing the principles of a mechanical assembly or the load distribution of a bridge. The true genius of this method lay in the object's complete innocence. Gaming sets were ubiquitous in noble households, merchant halls, and religious communities, traveling across borders as personal effects or gifts without a hint of suspicion. A guard inspecting a traveler's belongings would see a beautifully inlaid Merrill's board and think only of leisure, never of load-bearing calculations. This approach brilliantly exploited the rigid social boundaries of the era, where the serious work of engineering and the frivolous world of games were seen as entirely separate. By hiding a technical schematic within a game's rulebook or etching its core ratios into the board's pattern, artisans ensured their most vital secrets would be overlooked, protected by the perfect camouflage of play. The information was not locked in a chest but left in the open, waiting for a player who understood that every move on the board was also a step in constructing the future. A stone bridge was a permanent public lesson in physics and material science. The 21st trick used these vital structures to embed engineering principles directly into the landscape. While a bridge served its obvious purpose of crossing a river, its form was a complex cipher. The specific curvature of its arches was not merely for strength, it was a precise diagram of load distribution, demonstrating how to channel immense weight down to the foundations. A master mason could study the subtle variations in the arch shapes from the bank to the center of the river and understand how to compensate for different soil densities or water pressures. Even the decorative cutwaters, the triangular projections that split the current, held hydrodynamic secrets. Their angles and lengths were a permanent record of how to design a structure that could withstand centuries of floodwaters without being undermined. The pattern of the stonework itself was a language. The alternating use of larger, rougher blocks at the base with smaller, finely dressed stones higher up was not just an aesthetic choice. This progression secretly encoded the changing stress levels within the bridge, teaching an initiated craftsman exactly where to place the strongest materials and where elegance could take priority. A bridge in one city could therefore contain the complete design principles for a much larger, more complex structure like a dam or a seawall in another. The knowledge was preserved with perfect security because it was locked inside a public utility. These bridges were so essential to trade and travel that they were guaranteed to be maintained and repaired, not torn down. This created an unbroken chain of access. A guild member arriving to repair flood damage would first read the original builder's intentions in the surviving stonework, learning the hidden ratios and material specifications before adding a single new block. The most advanced engineering secrets of the age were not hidden in vaults, but stood proudly in the open, carrying the weight of carts and travelers while silently bearing the far greater burden of preserving knowledge for the future. The final and perhaps most elegant trick lies in the silent passage of a shadow across a sundial. The very instruments created to measure time became perfect vessels for hiding the era's most advanced engineering. Sundials mounted on sun-drenched cathedral walls did more than just mark the canonical hours. The precise spacing between their engraved hour lines was a masterclass in geometry. A specific, non-uniform gap between the lines for 10 and 11 in the morning might secretly encode the golden ratio, a mathematical proportion crucial for creating perfectly stable arches. The angle of the gnomon, the metal pin that casts the shadow, was not set merely for local latitude. Its exact tilt could mirror the ideal pitch for a timber roof, ensuring it would shed water and snow for centuries without sagging. This deception grew even more sophisticated with the arrival of mechanical clocks. The intricate assemblies of gears and escapements inside a tower clock were a complex language of their own. The ratio between the number of teeth on the great drive wheel and the smaller pinion gear was not just about telling time accurately. That same ratio could be the exact formula needed to calculate the gear train for a powerful crane or a grain mill. The precise shape of a gear tooth, carefully filed by hand, demonstrated the metalworking knowledge required to create components that would mesh smoothly under immense load without shattering. A master craftsman studying the clockwork in a town hall tower was not merely admiring its ingenuity. He was reading a detailed manual on precision manufacturing, written in a language of brass and iron. These timekeeping devices were the ultimate secure repositories. They were commissioned for public spaces, guaranteed to be maintained and preserved as symbols of a community's wealth and piety. Their inner workings were considered almost mystical, protecting them from casual interference. The knowledge they held was therefore immortal, ticking away the hours while silently preserving the technical wisdom that built the world around them. In the end, the medieval artisan's greatest legacy was not any single building or machine. It was this profound understanding that the most powerful secrets are not those locked away in darkness, but those placed in the light, hiding in the steady, trusted rhythm of everyday life.